All right, welcome back, everybody. For the folks who are in the room here and the folks joining us on Zoom, we said we'd start at 12:15, so we're almost there. I want to welcome everybody back and welcome our guest. George Lee is from San Francisco, which is why it's a little bit weird that we're seeing him from New York. But he is there today and was so gracious as to agree to speak with us today that we're happy to have him in there by Zoom. So George, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I tried to make it abundantly clear in my background, and maybe you can even hear the sirens to suggest I actually am in New York. But I'm sorry not to be there live, but I'm thrilled to be able to chat with you.
We don't even know if it's you since you're the AI guy. I mean,
that's
who
true.
knows?
Could be an avatar for sure.
George, welcome. I appreciate you doing this. And we had a discussion this morning about some of the labor issues around AI. We're going to be talking about some of the tech issues this afternoon. And I wonder if I could ask you to start just by giving us a little bit of context. You've been at Goldman Sachs for a long time and ended up in a C-level job there helping to run the company. But was it 3 years ago now? You took a pivot to something new and really interesting, which is why you're with us today and have kind of a unique perspective on what's happening out there.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to give you the very quick summary of a long career at Goldman. I've been here for 31 years. I started as an investment banker. I ran our technology, media, and telecom investment banking business for many years. In a strange left turn, I then became our co-chief information officer. And so I managed the 15,000 odd engineers at Goldman, which is often a number that surprises people. And about 3 years ago, I did shift to something new, which is building a global institute. We call it a think tank, the Goldman Sachs Global Institute. That's designed to promote thought leadership at the intersection of geopolitics and technology change. And it was a good idea 3 years ago. Events have conspired to make it even more salient. It's been a good time to be in the AI and geopolitics business. And so part of my job, I get involved in both dimensions of the think tank, but a lot of this is helping our clients understand the phenomenology of AI, the remarkable growth, the potential, the pitfalls, the issues to be aware of, and the impact on geopolitics, which is not inconsiderable.
Yeah, geopolitics is a whole separate conversation we could have a long conversation about right now, right? We talked a lot this morning about the impact of AI on workforces. And you've done some interesting looking at where in the workforce this impact is actually happening, different levels. We talked about lower high-skilled jobs being the ones that get replaced, if jobs are even getting replaced. And both, in Goldman as a gigantic employer, which we now know has 15,000 engineers, I'm surprised by that.
Right.
And globally, with your institute perspective on the country and the whole world, what are you seeing? Where are the jobs actually changing, and what has already happened? And with your crystal ball, what's happening next?
Yeah, obviously super important, very complex, and extremely fast-moving set of issues around this. And, first of all, I would just step back and say, we have to remember we're very, very early in this journey. The public-facing dimension of this technology is coming up on 3 years old. Diffusion of new technology in the enterprise takes much longer than you might think. One interesting data point of that is now, 10 or 12 years into this, there are about 35% of enterprise workloads are on the cloud. And so we've been thinking about, and working hard on that for years, and yet, we're still somewhat early in that journey. And so I think that puts into perspective that while 1 billion people are using ChatGPT, our personal habits are shifting quickly. Enterprise workflows just change on a slower cadence. There's good reason for that at places like Goldman Sachs. That's because we're a regulated financial institution. Trust, compliance, governance, risk management are central to what we do. Many businesses are like that. Then you have the fact that, look, workflows in the enterprise are deeply ingrained. Workflows are enshrined. Habits are hard won. And the hardest part about shifting habits in the enterprise is really about human change management, changing people's routines, changing the way that work gets done, all at a moment where this technology is ascending and changing at a very steep pace. That in and itself is kind of a retardant to adoption. because it's hard to know when, where, how, and with whom you should shoot your shot. Do you build an application now? Maybe it's the wrong architecture, maybe it's the wrong vendor. You waste a bunch of time. Do you wait a year and then maybe you can't catch up to a competitor that moved faster? All of these issues are, I think, at some level suppressing the rate of change in the enterprise. And what I'm seeing today as a result is a phrase I think you and I talked about earlier, which is flat is the new up. So rather than companies pursuing what might have been aggressive hiring plans to accommodate a growthier economic backdrop, they're sort of saying, look, I actually want to keep my headcount flat and ask people to do more with less. And we're seeing that at companies like Walmart. We've talked about growing 4 to 6% in the top line while keeping headcount flat. Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan saying, look, we want to be scrappier and, not just hire people as a first instinct. The CEO of Shopify explicitly said in a memo, you have to come to me and persuade me that your new initiative that you're wanting to hire people for can't be done by AI. And so in general, I think the regime is, we're not ready to lay a bunch of people off yet. We're trying to experiment with how we can proliferate this technology, what kind of efficiencies we can garner. But in the meantime, we're going to be scrappier and keep our hiring, low to flat. Now that could change fast, and I'm starting to see evidence. And like the canary in the coal mine for change there is the technology industry itself, where you see fewer developers getting hired, the number of job listings on LinkedIn going down, et cetera. So I've been saying flat is the new up is the regime, but it could change fast.
Yeah, when you were describing that, you said we're not ready to lay a lot of people off. Then you said the word yet, which carries a lot of weight there. Are there sectors of the economy, either sectors of the economy or sectors of the workforce, like high wage versus low wage, urban versus rural, where you're seeing the changes happen faster? I guess by changes, I mostly mean decrease in workforce.
Yep.
Or lack of new hiring in workforce, right?
Let me qualify yet in the sense that I think there will be fewer jobs that have current job descriptions in the enterprise, unambiguously. There will be fewer people doing the work that exists in the enterprise today. The $10 trillion question is whether, as is typical historically been the case, new roles, new opportunities, new growth vectors emerge that we couldn't have possibly anticipated that mandate new jobs, new functions, new demand for people. It's the oft-cited stat that 60% of the jobs today didn't exist in 1940. And so, there's a reason for optimism that these shifts can create new opportunity, new jobs. The hard thing here is the abruptness and rate of change in this technology, and that adaption function may go slower. So as I said, I think the canary in the coal mine is what's going on in technology itself, where being leaner, having fewer people, being able to move faster, change faster, to have to compete with companies. Now, the barrier between a new idea and that new idea being expressed and commercialized in code for a new company has never been lower. And so as a big established company, you actually have to begin to work at the same rate of change as younger companies. That implies to many people, smaller workforces, leaner teams, et cetera. You're seeing that play out at places like Microsoft, at Meta, at Amazon, et cetera. And, if history is a guide, what happens there first often spills out into the rest of the economy, and probably in an accelerated way in this phenomenon, because these are the people who best understand how to harness these technologies because they're the progenitors of it. And so they're kind of on the leading edge of how to get leverage out of this technology as that spills over to more incumbent industries, telecom, medicine, healthcare, consulting. The adoption wave will be slower, but I often look at these big tech companies as kind of a leading indicator of where the rest of the world might go.
So does the ability to be nimble, launch a new business more quickly, launch a new line of business more quickly, does that threaten some of the biggest incumbents right now? I mean, are we likely
Absolutely.
in the next 10 years to see a bunch of those giant buildings in back of you have different names on top of them?
Could well. I mean, as always, was it thus that these platform shifts tend to empower disruptors, new companies. Now, unusually, this revolution has felt a little bit different because incumbents have benefited in the early going from this. People have the scale to provide the computation necessary to advance these algorithms, and the hyperscalers have obviously been the biggest beneficiaries of this. At the same time, having talking to them, they feel very vulnerable and threatened to disruption from below. And so, yeah, I think you'll find we're going to find an enormous amount of tumult and change here. By the way, we worry about that at Goldman. While we're a regulated institution, there's some protection of rate of change that's inherent in that. The ability to spin up a new business that addresses a need for our clients, and to build a code base very, very rapidly and iterate it very rapidly with these tools, like, it's threatening and concerning to us too.
But if you can use these tools as efficiently as a small startup can, then in theory, your market position and your history and all the stuff you know should still give you an advantage, right? But maybe not anymore?
That's utterly true. But again, the offset to that is all the deeply ingrained and enshrined habits, workflows, and ways of working that a 157-year-old firm like Goldman Sachs brings to the table. And that human change management, by the way, and the generational dimension of human change management, I think, makes it hard for big businesses to figure out how to adopt this and to respond at the same cadence and velocity that, smaller companies can move at.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of those younger folks entering the workforce or in the workforce. What are you seeing in terms of what people coming into the workforce are doing? And also, if you can, share your thoughts about education, right? How do we have to change education to serve this thing in the future that we can't completely get our hands around yet?
Yeah, fascinating topics. First of all, I mean, I think one of the things that makes me most hopeful about change at companies like Goldman Sachs and at big institutions is the fact that we have an infusion of young people every year. And we've seen in the past kind of the digital native transition and how young people bring a facility with new tools and they change the way of working for, more mature people in the workplace. I don't think we'll ever have witnessed a more profound generational shift than we're witnessing now. We have people showing up from campus that have been habituated to using these tools over 3 or 4 years in academic settings. They go to chatbots first when they have a question. It's their instinct to use co-pilots to, as my young daughter often says, why would I write a single word of my own when this machine can do it for me? Kind of sensibility that they bring to this. And that kind of wellspring of innovation, new ways of thinking will create change. It's, again, one of the things that makes me optimistic. Now, education is a fascinating topic. I finished a term a couple of years ago as chairman of Middlebury College's board, and I remain on the board. And this poses a really interesting challenge and opportunity to secondary and higher education platforms. Do you think about one of the roles that a really good chatbot can adopt is perpetual, always on, infinitely patient, widely rangeable office hours for any kind of professor? Think about, when we grew up, this idea of like your professor would permit an hour or two where you could come in sheepishly to their office and be afraid of asking a dumb question and so forth. Now you can kind of get the mentorship, the advice, the learning adapted to your learning style at the speed you like by consulting with these things through voice, voice approaches, et cetera. So I think it's going to really challenge the way that curricula are delivered, the rate at which people want to learn, and frankly, the role of professors. My hopeful case here is that the act of imbuing knowledge or transferring knowledge happens mostly offline and happens a lot with the assistance of AI. And the role of a great professor becomes more like a coach, a mentor, someone who helps guide and inspire your learning journey rather than simply conferring knowledge. I think that's the optimistic case. We'll see how it all plays out. But that requires a lot of adjustment and change by institutions that are by construction brittle, slow-moving, and for good reason.
So if your daughter doesn't think she has to write a word on her own anymore, probably not the great candidate for the next reporting job at CalMatters. Is she
Right.
going to think it's worth it to pay tuition to go to Middlebury versus get access to all those things without even setting foot on campus?
This is the $75,000 a year question. I think for the first time, it actually poses a challenge, a really fundamental economic challenge. Now, there's a lot to commend the residential university and college experience, the experience of being around your peers, the maturation that happens, the experiences, the networks, the parties, exactly, the beer busts on the quad, whatever. All of that still has enormous value to it. So I'm hopeful that we're able to express those really important experiences, and again shift the way that pedagogy happens that takes advantage of the capabilities of the machine and leverages the very deep humanity and ability of professors to be incredible coaches, sources of inspiration, et cetera.
So next we'll be looking for AI-operated kegs, I guess is the next step.
Exactly.
It does make you think. So you shared something with me earlier about new jobs for college graduates, right? The idea that if you're not creating new jobs, we have generations of people coming out of college who have less access to jobs. Is that the right way to put it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an interesting thing, which is, look, let's play out the theory of the case I presented, which is flat's the new up, or even maybe there will be fewer jobs. People will do more with less. Hopefully we get an offset to that, which is the creation of brand new job categories and functions we couldn't imagine today. But there may well be less jobs in programmatic hiring situations like at JP Morgan or McKinsey or otherwise. At the same time, I think the opportunity for young people to pursue their own independent business ideas, as I said, the barrier between idea and expression of commercial opportunities super low. I expect there to be more entrepreneurialism. Expect the growth of a bunch of younger firms that can displace, disrupt, and challenge big incumbent institutions. But I think the sort of well-paved pathway for graduates to McKinsey, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and beyond may get a little bumpier and may have to present, the need for more creativity, more entrepreneurialism, more independent ambition, and a little bit more creativity. And by the way, that might not be a bad thing for the world.
Yeah, fascinating. I believe, if I'm right about this, the unemployment rates are actually a little bit higher among younger folks now, right? Is that a result of this?
It is, and it's fascinating. The well-known hedge fund manager, Paul Tudor Jones, who characterizes himself as a lifelong risk manager, wrote a piece in Time magazine. And after some experiences he's had recently, he's really worried about a potential jobs apocalypse. And one of the indicators he cited is the fact that unemployment among recent graduates is about 5.8%. That's higher than the overall unemployment rate of about approximately 4%. That's happened only twice in the last 50 years. And he points to that as a warning signal that these challenges are ahead. I've spoken in a number of events like this where the first question from the crowd is, my daughter is a magna cum laude graduate of MIT and she's still looking for a job as a developer. Help. And so, I think this can be a bumpy transition, as will many things related to this revolution. Again, hopefully, especially for young people, the one thing they have in their favor is, lots of adaptability, lots of flexibility, and without a sense of entitlement of the way things work. And so hopefully they can adapt to change better than some of us who are longer in the tooth. But for right now, that's definitely playing out.
I mean, a 2-point spread between one generation and all the other ones that's a huge change, and that's a lot of people.
It is.
I'm trying to picture your face when somebody says to you, well, this one job will never get replaced by AI, right? This job's not going to change. I imagine the answer is every job's going to change, and probably yours and mine. Are you, as you think about just small scale Goldman Sachs and big scale the world, are there certain kinds of positions that you see changing fastest, or that are most important to preserve, or that stand out from the other ones?
Yeah. I think there are a couple categories of that, and I'll try to summarize it and come back to me on on other points. One is, just strangely, jobs that have a physical interface to our world, I think have a protective umbrella around them that will take many, many years of advancements in things like robotics to pierce. And so, ironically, some of the trades are probably some of the most resiliently common or similar jobs for the next 5 years, and there'll probably be significant demand for them. Second, there's the old chestnut that you're less likely to get replaced by AI than by someone who knows how to capture AI and really harvest the value of it. And so I think it's incumbent upon all of us, everyone in the workforce, aspiring to be in the workforce, to become expert and facile with the use of these technologies. Because one framework here is, the amount of the horizon of tasks, the amount of creativity you can bring to bear, the number of hypotheses you can test, the number of new ideas you can explore, that horizon is expanded dramatically with the use of these tools. And so people who really take advantage of that will be extremely well served. And then I think the most vulnerable population are probably people who are doing relatively low intellectual capital work in knowledge work settings where they may be, taking a case file and enriching it by going and, I'll give you an example in the engineering world. If we have a system failure, there's an alert that is issued, and then a bunch of people scramble around to go pull data out of log files or go interview people who are subject to or who are involved in that platform, or go get more information from the web about outages that are similar, and they put it in a case file and deliver it to a group of people to reach judgments about how to remediate or mitigate the challenge. Those kind of jobs, which are very mechanical, just operating, gathering information, formatting it, and putting it into a certain, workflow, that's got to be extremely vulnerable. Now, the peril of that is those jobs are not generally dead-end career jobs. They are the beginning of apprenticeship and fundamental learning about businesses and workflows that allows you to become a senior person and flourish. And the whole thing of walking uphill in the snow both ways to school being the only way to gain the practical skills necessary to be senior in an industry. And that's something we have to reckon with, which is if we wake up in a world where we have fewer junior people and they're doing fewer rote tasks, how do they learn the fundamentals of the business? How do they gain the apprenticeship and learning that's necessary to be an experienced, thoughtful senior person with great judgment?
Yeah, same problem we had.
Unanswered question.
Yeah, same problem we had when we switched to remote work, right? George, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. I will tell you that while you were talking, something happened in San Francisco that hasn't happened in the past 6 weeks, which is the sun came out, so you can come back now.
All right.
We're going to continue with our live panel in person here. Stick around and join us for that if you can. And really appreciate you taking the time to do this and giving us a little bit of perspective. You've got a wonderful perch to view this from.
Well, my pleasure. And thank you for the work that you do. It's been really interesting learning about CalMatters. And I'm a huge believer, as you know, partially live in a small community on the Sonoma coast. And the work you do to facilitate sustainable and high quality journalism, and it's just really critical in our world. So I appreciate it. Thank you for all you do.
Appreciate that so much. Thanks, George.
Okay, bye-bye.